Welcome into a midweek edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Brandon Kravitz here along with our resident analyst, Nic Whalen, on this fine Tuesday. Coming up on today's pod, we're going to hand things off to you for what we like to call the bounce, your questions answered in rapid-fire form, and we'll wrap today's podcast with a bunch of those. I've got some questions I want to throw Nick's way, guys that will not be winning future awards in the NBA that are oddly at the top of some lists. And we've got a big cup night to talk about, much to be decided. Are you mentally prepared for this one, Nick?
Really, more than anything, it's about preparing your eyes, I think, for NBA Cup nights. Especially in a household that I share with a woman, my lovely wife. She's always taken aback at the courts. I know it's been a couple weeks now. Like I've adjusted, but I always need to warn her, like, hey, court's gonna be a little wacky tonight. Just be prepared for this. But this is our final night of group play for the Emirates NBA Cup. So a lot still on the line. I think we got 11 games on the slate tonight, so it should be a lot of fun watching all those. I mean, who doesn't have a Wizards Cavaliers showdown circled on their calendar? Wizards limping into that one, 2-16, riding a 14-game losing streak.
Yeah, our biggest spread on the board tonight with the Cavs favored by a whopping 16 points. 16. The last time I checked. Let me
that's what it's at DraftKings right now.
Yeah, 16 and a half. Right now, that's a big number. Probably stay away from that one. It's Cavs or nothing. I don't know how you could take Washington, but we do have some things to be decided here. If you've chosen, I feel like it's whether or not if you're an NBA fan, you're into the playoffs, so you don't have to decide to be into the playoffs. It's just kind of the reason why you watch is to get to that point. I feel like you have to decide as a fan if you care about the in-season tournament. It's a choice. It's like a declaration. And if you care, then tonight is your night because you've got a couple of winner-take-all scenarios. You've got the Magic and the Knicks. The winner of that game wins Group A. A winner-take-all between the Pistons and the Bucks. The Thunder have to beat the Jazz, and the Spurs have to beat the Suns. Vice versa, the Suns have to beat the Spurs. If they want to advance, there's a three-way tie going on in the West. Very confusing. And all of those teams very close in point differential. So that'll probably be the most squirrely thing that happens tonight. But those are some of the scenarios. And I have chosen to care about this. I don't know how much. I still can't really put words onto that. I just know that it matters a little bit.
I thought year one was pretty fun. It was fun. Yeah, it was confusing. It's still a little confusing with the tiebreakers. I would actually like to see maybe an expansion of group play where, I know they don't want this to, take up a huge swath of the season necessarily, but I think just having the 4 group play games maybe doesn't seem like quite enough. Like, could you play everybody twice over the span of a few weeks? We already have a bunch of teams that have faced each other like 3 times already. It's not that crazy to play the same teams, multiple times over the course of a month, because I do think the tiebreakers are really confusing. It's like you go over to the page on NBA.com and you're like, okay, there's 3 teams at 2-1 in West Group B. The Lakers are 2-2, yet they're somehow still not eliminated here for a wild card spot. Like, I think unless you're really dialed in on the mechanics of how this works, it could be a little off-putting or confusing to the more casual NBA fan. So I think, getting more group play games in where you not eliminate necessarily, but you mitigate the impact of tiebreakers, I think would make this a lot more clear. Because I think, if you're just casually paying attention to this, it might not be until after tonight that you realize, oh, nice. Oh, the Bucks won Group B. Sweet. They're going to be in the NBA Cup. But I do think what they've done, with the actual bracket play in Vegas has been really cool. The promotion's been good for it. I thought the crowd was pretty solid last year. Really felt like a big deal, almost like a cross between All-Star Weekend and the finals. You're never going to replicate NBA Finals type of intensity in December. But as far as year one of this event went, I think it went over pretty well. I think players bought in to the degree that the league was hoping. And they've always said they're open to more tweaks on a year-to-year basis.
Perhaps the fix to what you're talking about is just to make an extra group where you don't. So instead of having wild cards, you just had group winners, and the group winner is very simple. It's head to head, and then if there's a tie there, then it's point differential. Although I guess it's hard to have it. You can't have a tie because if it's head, then it would just be head to head. It's the point differential thing that I think throws people off. Because if you were to
I think that's fair.
add a group and then the winners of the groups move on, the end.
Yeah. I don't know. This is probably a really bad idea, but what if we just went by like straight up total points? It was just like a point straight up differential. Like, doesn't even matter if you win or lose. So like, you got
treat it like your fantasy league.
Right, exactly. You got teams pushing to win games by like 60 if they can.
I don't hate that. Dallas looks to be mostly in the position to be a wild card in the in-season tournament in the West. Their point differential is plus 41. The interesting thing for my squad, the Orlando Magic, they would have to lose by roughly 31 points tonight to the Knicks to not make it to the next round, which I guess is possible. That does happen in the NBA, but a pretty extreme scenario. And I think you can still bet the Magic to make the next round. So I think that a hefty price, but probably worth it. You'd essentially be taking the Magic plus 31, which is a pretty good wager.
Yeah, I mean, for a team that tends to play these low-scoring games, I don't think that's necessarily the worst bet. The Magic, to qualify for the NBA Cup semifinals, are plus 115, which is interesting.
Wow.
We don't have. I'm not seeing odds right now for a lot of these Eastern Conference teams to qualify for the quarterfinals. No odds right now on the Orlando Magic up at DraftKings. So we'll see if those populate in the day ahead. But either way, fun NBA Cup night. Looking forward to the end of group play and getting this thing moving.
So let's talk about some headlines that are popping off from last night. Jimmy Buckets has already missed 5 games on the season, one of them being last night. Eric Spoelstra called him day-to-day. He's 35 now. The Miami Heat are so weird. I have no idea what they're trying to do at this moment in their franchise. Is this a real red flag moment for you when it comes to Jimmy Butler and a guy that you can trust night to night?
I think those red flags had been present in the past. Obviously Jimmy Butler's, I think early in his career was kind of known as a guy who rarely missed time. He was one of these, just straight up dogs in a good way. Somebody that would kind of always be out there. But the last few years, I mean, you've kind of had to bake that into his fantasy stock, right? I mean, you look at games played, 60 last year, 64 the year before, 57, 52. I know we're getting into, abbreviated COVID seasons at that point. So not quite as fair, but like you said, he's 35 years old. I think if you drafted Jimmy Butler thinking you were going to get 74 games out of him, I don't really think that was ever going to be realistic. And, I have him in one league. It was an auction. I felt like I got a good value on him because there was, just general skepticism around how many games he would play. The numbers were down a little bit last year as well, both in terms of the counting stats and the efficiency. And hasn't been a great start. I mean, even when he's been out there, he's been roughly the same player, but he's given you 19, 5 and 5, which is fine, but not quite peak Jimmy Butler production. The defensive numbers have been down a little bit. The 3-point volume obviously has decreased pretty significantly over the last few years. And yeah, Miami's just one of these teams that it feels like every time you check the standings, they're like hovering, they're one game above, one game under 500. They're bringing Terry Rozier off the bench now, which has been a pretty significant hit to his fantasy stock. I actually kind of like Terry Rozier as a bounce back guy this year. I thought things didn't really go well for him in Miami after the trade. He was banged up, but he's somebody that had been really sneaky good, I thought, for several years in Charlotte. And I don't know if he's just fallen out of favor, but the minutes are down. Even without Jimmy Butler last night, only played 22 minutes in a blowout loss.
And a guy that I've been a little bit hot and cold on, I drafted Jaime Jaquez thinking that he'd be able to. Yeah, exactly. And if you remember that last year when he started to shine was when Jimmy Butler was missing time. It almost seems like for him to have sustained value, Butler has to be out of the lineup. He's a different player when he's asked to play that role.
Yeah, no question. No question. And Jaquez himself has missed some games on and off this season as well. But yeah, he's been kind of tough to project offensively. There's not significant upside there. He's not having these high scoring nights by any means, but when Butler's out, I think you can kind of look at the production that we saw last night, 19 points, 10 boards. He's not always going to be a double digit rebound guy, of course, but he'll give you a few assists. He's given you 5 steals over the last 2 games, but played 36 minutes last night, which has not been the norm for him. When Butler's out there, he's been pretty consistently in that like 18 to 24 minute range. And I don't know if Miami's trying to do what Golden State is doing and go with this like egalitarian rotation where, they're going pretty deep, even in a blowout situation last night. I know that the rotation is not, a perfect gauge for a closer game, but, they're going 10, 11 deep on a lot of nights, not a lot of high minute dudes in that lineup outside of Hero. and Adebayo. So it's been a very weird start for Miami. I think there was this narrative out there that, after Jimmy Butler was publicly scolded by Pat Riley last offseason, like, all right, maybe he'll buckle down a little bit. Maybe Miami will take the regular season a little more seriously. I think they're trying, but they've just had a very weird year so far. Even Bam Adebayo, who Alex and I were talking about on the show yesterday, very weird start to the year for him. Up and down, his shooting percentage is way down. Just has not really taken that step forward that we thought he would maybe a year or two ago offensively.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like they know exactly what they want to be. They made it to the finals, and then they thought they could just sort of run that back. They added Rozier as a nice piece, but it's not like that's a fundamental shift. It seems like it's time for them to make one of those big Miami Heat moves, and they're kind of sitting on their hands. We'll see if they're active at the deadline. A team I'm buying into a lot right now that got another win last night. They've picked up 4 in a row. It's the Atlanta Hawks. Now, I know they're playing the Pelicans, who aren't exactly in great form right now, but still another night where scoring was no issue for them. Dyson Daniels continues to be one of the most improved players in the league. Jalen Johnson is turning into a full-blown star. And it's to the point now where I look at Trae Young like he's a role player on this team. I don't think he's the engine to the Atlanta Hawks anymore.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but you're right. I mean, Atlanta is moving in the right direction here. I mean, this is a team that has handed the Washington Wizards their only 2 wins on the season early on, and now they beat the Cavs back to back. Beat that banged up Hornets team over the weekend, and I don't know what you put into a win over the Pelicans at this point, even though they have some of their guys back. I mean, that looks like a team that has maybe dug itself too big of a hole to begin the year, but it's refreshing, I suppose, to see the Atlanta Hawks winning games, without Trae Young having to put up 35 and 15 every single night. And, you look at
that the assists are still there for Trae Young, but they don't need him. They don't need him to be that 30-point scorer in order to win. They're more balanced than that.
Well, they're getting away with really poor shooting from Trae Young. That's been the big thing. You look at his numbers over the last 8 games. Like, he's still playing 35 minutes. He's relaxed a little bit as far as the total field goal attempts go. The free throws have been a little bit spotty, but he's shooting 24% from 3 in that span. So, I think the numbers would look a little more Trae Young-ish if he wasn't in the shooting slump right now. He was 2 of 9 from 3 last night. He had a 3 of 13 game, a 1 of 8 game mixed in during that span. But yeah, the assists have certainly sustained, and honestly, I think the emergence of Jalen Johnson as a big time second option, not just he's a nice young player, we'll see how he develops. I mean, he's been fantastic this year.
Yeah, he has, and he fits into a conversation that we're going to have in a moment. But the last thing, as far as a headline from last night that I wanted to get to, LeBron James reconsidering his goal of playing 82 games this season, which always felt a little bit far out there for a guy that's inching closer to 40. LeBron is in the midst of his worst shooting slump since his rookie season. He is 0 of 19 on his last 19 3-point attempts. So what do we do with this information, if anything?
Yeah, it's, we've been having this discussion with LeBron for what, like 10 years now of like, all right, is this a year where LeBron, where age catches up to him? I'm still not ready to go there because on balance, the guy is in his age 39 season. He's still giving you 22, 8, and 9 on the year. He's still shooting 48% from the field. And he's even despite going 0 for 19 over his last 4 or 5 games, whatever it is, he's still shooting 35% from 3, which is not bad for LeBron. He's coming off of 41% last year. That's been the anomaly. Like LeBron has never really been a 40% 3-point shooter. He was a 32% 3-point shooter 2 years ago. So, I think we're just seeing some general regression there. I know it's been ugly the last few games. They barely beat Utah on Sunday. They get blown out by Minnesota last night. But LeBron James is 39. It's kind of a 2-man team. They didn't have Austin Reeves last night. A little bit disappointing and kind of shocking that they still couldn't hang in with this anemic Timberwolves team that hasn't really been any better than the Lakers this season. But, I think this is kind of what happens when you're near age 40. And again, LeBron has never been consistently a knockdown 3-point shooter. He hasn't had a slump like this, but I think I'm not completely panicking. I'm not looking to offload LeBron James quite yet.
Right. And the 3-point numbers are what really stand out because of the offer, but it's also his field goal shooting has been pretty bad. 25%, 43%, 38%, 44%. And And he's a guy that gets a lot of his work done around the rim. So for him to be off the way that he is, he's LeBron.
Yeah.
He's going to bounce back from this.
Well,
At some point, if
I
you
think
are,
something to keep in mind.
yeah,
Something to keep in mind too is the free throw rate is down. It's way down. He's at 4.5 free throw attempts per game, which is far and away a career low. In terms of 3-point attempts, he's actually down relative to where he was a couple years ago. 21, 22 season, he was taking 8 threes a game a few years ago. He was taking 7 threes a game 2 seasons ago. So it's not, it would be much more concerning to me if he was taking like 9 threes a game and still not getting to the rim. Like he's finishing at the rim at a solid rate, but he's the calls, and LeBron has openly complained about this for years. He's not getting to the line like he was early in his career. So I think that's why the overall numbers are down a bit. Because he's just not getting to the rim, not getting those same calls that he was at his peak. But it's been a rough stretch. I mean, it's a little alarming to see LeBron finish under 20 points now in 5 of his last 6 games.
Do you think you could get something for him that would make you feel good in a trade right now? Or are too many people aware of the shooting woes?
I would wait for him to bounce back, because he will. He's LeBron. And if you are concerned about this stretch, I would not be trying to sell him now. Like, his value is probably at its lowest that it's been in a while. Especially considering he's been healthy. I don't think he's missed a single game this entire year. Like that was obviously the concern with LeBron is, okay, we know what the raw numbers are going to be, but how many games is he going to play? I would wait for him to, have a game where he goes, 3 of 5 from 3, maybe string together a couple solid performances, then perhaps look to offload him. I wouldn't do it now, but there's still enough name value with LeBron. There's somebody in your league that will want LeBron James on their roster. So I don't think if you sell him, you'd have to take some sort of huge loss.
We will get to a futures conversation and your questions coming up here on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. But first, more on DraftKings Pick 6.
Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks, compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick 6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Enlightening as always. We appreciate that, Nick Whalen. I don't want to bury the lead too much here. The headline to this podcast, 5 category specialists to target on the waiver wire. A couple of names that I've definitely been I've been kind of patchworking my roster a lot these last couple of weeks, and it's worked out well. I was disappointed with the start of Victor Wembanyama. Felt like that was holding me down. That is no longer the case. But struggled with some 3-point shooting. I went out and got Dalton Knecht, and while it wasn't a good night last night, he's been quite good for the Lakers in this uptick of a role that JJ has been giving him.
Yeah, man. I mean, I wouldn't say I was totally wrong on Knecht. Watched him a lot at Tennessee. I didn't think he would be quite this much of an instant impact player. I think there was a lot of hooting and hollering, on draft night when he fell all the way to the Lakers. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. We'll see. But he's been great. He's been great. I mean, it's come down a little bit over these last few games. Obviously had that crazy stretch, in early or mid-November before Thanksgiving with the back-to-back 5 and 9 3-pointer games. He is one of his last 10 over the last 2 games. So it's not just LeBron struggling from 3 for this team, but yeah, I mean, if you're in a 10 or a 12 team league, he's might still be out there. He's shooting 41% from 3 on the year, despite this recent swoon, taking almost 6 per game. And that, factors in early in the season when he was barely playing for this team off the bench. Now, Austin Reeves didn't play last night. That has helped. The The fall off of D'Angelo Russell has certainly helped as well. But I think the Lakers are a team that, JJ Redick said coming into the year, we need to shoot more threes. They were near the bottom of the league in terms of attempts, despite being a pretty efficient 3-point shooting team a year ago. And, they're trying to get Anthony Davis to shoot more threes. Obviously, LeBron's not shooting it well right now. If Austin Reeves misses any more time, I think that's going to be huge for Dalton Knecht. So if you're looking for threes specifically, if that's where we want to start, I have no problem there. I went and grabbed Duncan Robinson in a 16-team league over the weekend. I was kind of surprised he was available in that format. It is a category league, of course. He promptly went 0 for 6 last night from beyond the arc. I did not have him in my lineup, thankfully, but he's still somebody that, on balance, you're going to have to live with those nights. They're going to be few and far between, but he's still going to be a 2.5 3-pointer per game guy and kind of the definition of a 3-point specialist.
So one of the guys that I had picked up about a month ago, I think it was right after Tari Eason dropped 27, and I needed that scoring pop, so I went and got him. Figured it would be short-lived, but I was going to take what I could get. And, he's always been somebody who's been pretty good in the steals department, but he's been lighting it up lately, and now he's become a fixture for an entirely different reason. I don't know how widely out there Tari Eason is at this point, but he feels like one of those guys, if you need steals, he's a good one to roster.
Yeah, he's still out there in a lot of shallower formats. His ESPN roster rate is just under 50%. So, if you're in a 14 or a 16-team league, probably not going to be out there. If you're in a 10 or a 12-team league, he certainly could be. He's great in terms of the defensive numbers. The blocks have been there as well, not quite to the same degree as the steals. The steals production has been crazy for him. Last 10 games, he's given you 2.3 steals per game. And it's not quite Dyson Daniels level, but pretty close. He also rebounds really well. I think the struggles of Jabari Smith, have really helped him out. We were always concerned about the Rockets rotation coming into the year. One of those teams that felt like it just might have too many guys, which is a good thing in real life, a bad thing in fantasy. But Eason's been so good and he stayed healthy. And that's been the other thing. He missed a bunch of time last year, as not him yet this season. And, he's given you over those last 10.5 points, over 7 rebounds, like I said, 2.3 steals and 1.2 blocks. He is shooting it very poorly from 3. So that's something to keep an eye on. That's affecting his field goal percentage. But yeah, in terms of steals, that's been huge. I would throw Cason Wallace out there, another guy who might be available in deep leagues. We're starting to see him play a bunch of minutes of late. Part of that is Alex Caruso being out of the lineup. And I think once Caruso is back from this hip injury, he's another guy who could give you 1.5 plus steals.
In the blocks department, somebody that I don't think went away as fast as a lot of people thought he might is Goga Bitadze. And it's this jumbo lineup that Jamal Mosley has been deploying. It will change when Paolo comes back, but we still don't know exactly when that's going to be. It might be around Christmas, could be later than that. And it's working right now. The Magic have won 12 of their last 13, so there's no reason to change a good thing right now. Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Bitadze in the lineup, I guess you can continue to roster Goga. And if somebody dropped him because they saw Wendell coming back, I think he's a guy you got to roster, especially if you need that production.
Yeah, in deeper leagues for sure. If they keep going with this big lineup and the minutes are going to be there for Bitadze, I think I'm totally fine hanging on to him. He's been a top 100 guy so far on the year in 8 category leagues. Obviously Donovan Clingan is injured right now, but he's somebody that was giving you north of 2 blocks per game. In deeper leagues, you're probably still holding him, but somebody might have dropped him in a shallower format. I think we got to mention Yves Missi as well. Somebody who I dropped a couple of weeks ago. The minutes were starting to fall off for him. He still started just about every game over the last month, but went through a pretty rough stretch in mid-November where he just really wasn't giving you much at all. But now that this team has some competent guard play with CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray back in the mix, we're starting to see Yves Missi, just be fed easy baskets. That's really what stood out to me watching that Hawks game last night. 11 of 14 from the field. He doesn't really shoot outside of the restricted area, but he's being set up really well by those 2 guards. Finished with 23 and 12 last night, in addition to a block. And he's now got at least 1 block in 5 straight games, giving you almost 2 per game in that span.
In the rebounding department, I've kind of liked watching this Charlotte team play. And I personally, I think they're more fluid, perhaps would be the right way to put it. Without LaMelo Ball in the lineup, the ball just sticks with him so much. But Moussa Diabate, who has been a rebounding machine for the last month, and he's worked himself into that starting lineup. It feels like he is, because he plays for Charlotte, he's still somebody that's going to fly under a lot of radars.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, just not somebody that we were talking about coming into the year. I mean, he was a second rounder a few years ago, and, obviously hasn't done much in his career. He's already played like significantly more minutes this season than the last 2 years combined. I do wonder, Mark Williams could be back in the lineup as soon as tonight. Obviously Nick Richards returned over the weekend as well. So the Diabate run could be coming to an end. I think the torn ACL for Grant Williams, will probably keep him in the rotation to a degree, but when both Richards and Williams are out there, he really has no option but to be marginalized. But he's given you 9 rebounds per game so far in the year. So hopefully you were able to stream him in, over these last couple of weeks and take advantage of that. I'm pretty optimistic on what Nick Richards could be rest of season. I prioritized him over Mark Williams in one deeper league where both were available. I know there's probably a better chance that Mark Williams is the starter. I think he's the guy, that they have more invested in, the guy that they want to be their center of the future. I just don't know if I trust him to stay healthy. I really don't. And, Nick Richards is one of those guys that even if he's only playing 18 to 22 minutes off the bench, I mean, he could still give you like 8 points, 9 rebounds, a block, a steal, maybe even 2 blocks on a lot of nights. Like he's been to me like the more intriguing per minute fantasy guy.
I'm going to use this conversation about Charlotte to transition to the NBA futures conversation that we were going to tee up for all of you out there. I want to frame this a different way. I have 3 different categories where I plucked a name that's towards the top of the board who definitely will not be winning the award. So we're going to save people some money here.
Okay.
And LaMelo Ball would be one of them. He is 6-1. I think it's the third shortest odds to win most improved player in the NBA. I don't see a world where he takes home this award. He's already been an all-star, first of all. So there's that aspect to it. Does he even qualify? And is he going to play enough? Right now, he's already out of the lineup. I don't really trust it. I don't think you can lay $1 on him.
Yeah, he's actually 11-1 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. So shop around if you are interested in LaMelo. But no, I think you're right. I mean, obviously he started the year on a heater, and the raw numbers look fantastic. He has like one of the 5 highest usage rates in NBA history right now. But you're right. I think the issue with him, it's like, has he already been too good to win this award? I will say, I mean, he's up like almost 8 points per game compared to last year. The assists are actually down compared to the last 2 seasons. He's not quite at 7 assists per game, but the jump in scoring, like if he does average 31, 32 points per game, like that is enough of a leap that I could see him being in the mix. But I think the primary issue is you have more viable candidates who kind of fit the criteria of what this award has been over the last decade, which tends to be very good player who makes the leap from kind of borderline, not really an all-star, to, okay, this guy should probably be an all-star this year. That's where you have Franz Wagner at plus 175. I think Jalen Williams obviously has been fantastic at plus 450. Jalen Johnson at 7-1 at DraftKings. I mean, he fits this award almost to a T. Somebody who played really well last year, but I think, the injury kind of took some of the luster off, and now he's reminded people just how good he's been. Once you get deeper, I don't know if I'd really bet Dyson Daniels at 12-1. It's so defensive focused with him, and he's improved offensively as well. But I don't know if he's going to make quite enough of an overall statistical leap to have much of a case. And then there's some interesting veterans. Like Jakob Poeltl is 25-1. Norman Powell's 25-1. Ivica Zubac is 30-1. This is overwhelmingly an award that's been won by players who are in their like 3rd, 4th, 5th season in the NBA. Like you got to go back a while to find a precedent for a player like that winning the most improved player.
Another one was Jordi Fernandez, the head coach of the Nets. So I do think has done a really nice job, and there's a reason why he's getting some shine. But they're not even a play-in team yet as it stands right now, and I don't think it's going to get much better for them. There's just too many good candidates that are out there. I think he's a guy that you'll look at next year and say one of the favorites going into the following season, but I don't see a world where he wins this award this season.
He's done an excellent job. I mean, the Nets have been significantly more competitive so far this season than I thought they would be. Injuries started to stack up for that team, and there's only so much they can do about that. They don't have a ton of depth. He's 50-1 right now. So I wouldn't say he's, all that realistic of a candidate. And this is another award where I think you got some big dogs at the top. It's like Kenny Atkinson minus 120. Cavs are off to an incredible start. Obviously, he deserves to be the favorite. I think what Ime Udoka has done in Houston at plus 370, that makes a lot of sense. To me, Jamal Mosley would get the bid. If I were a voter, I would vote for Jamal Mosley. He's 9-1 right now. I mean, that's a significantly shorter number than we were seeing a couple weeks ago. I think all three of those guys, Atkinson, Udoka, and Mosley, in like a quote unquote typical year, like any of those three could be the runaway favorite. I mean, Jamal Mosley he's won 12 of his last 13 games without Paolo Banchero. All right. This is not some star-studded Orlando Magic roster. There's some nice pieces there, but it's not a team that on paper should be able to stomach the loss of Banchero and still be this good. So we'll see on Atkinson. It's like, I think the thing with him is like every game the Cavs lose, there's like a knock on his resume. If they end up winning 65 games, then yeah, that's probably enough, and really north of 60 is probably enough for him to win it. But if they do go through some sort of swoon and, they lose 5 out of 7, I think we're going to see those numbers adjust, pretty handily. And to me, the best value on the board right now is Mosley.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It kind of fits the criteria of you got to have a good record, which is why Jordi Fernandez won't win it. And you have to overcome a little bit of adversity. And that's the problem with Atkinson is that there's no adversity to it. It's just a good season. It's a really good season. Right. He'll probably finish with one of the best records in the NBA, but that doesn't usually do enough to get the votes. The last one would be Donovan Mitchell. He's 30-1. I mean, he is like 7th or 8th on the list for MVP. But as good as the Cavs are, it's a total team approach. A lot of it's defensively driven with the Cavs, and there's just too many statistical marvels that are in front of him for him to ever win this award. So I would scratch him from the list. Yeah. That is not money well spent.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, he's obviously been great. The Cavs have been great, but you need just amazing counting stats to really contend for the NBA MVP in this day and age, right? It's like, if Donovan Mitchell is putting together a great year, the counting stats pale in comparison to what Jokic is putting up. Same for SGA, same for Giannis, same for Tatum, same for Luka and Anthony Davis to some degree. I will say, I think AD at 16-1 is kind of the big red herring to me, the guy that I would not bet on. It's going to require a certain amount of team success that I just don't think is going to be there for the Lakers. They're a team that's been basically beating all the bad teams, which is good. That's not something you could always count on with them in years past. But I think as this season wears on, they're going to kind of gradually fall down the Western Conference standings. And even though Anthony Davis has been a much better player this year than LeBron James, I still think it's like almost impossible to win the MVP with LeBron on your roster, right? There's always going to be a certain amount of credit that's doled out to LeBron James. It would have been insane for like Dwayne Wade to win an MVP with the LeBron Heat. Obviously LeBron was a better player back then, but the Lakers aren't going to win enough games, and I still think there's going to be enough of that LeBron factor that, as great as the numbers have been, especially defensively for Davis, I wouldn't bet it at 16-1.
We appreciate everybody who has hung in on the live stream, and for those that have lit us up in the comments section, we're going to get to those right now. Time for the bounce. Next 10 minutes all belong to you guys. We'll start with Patrick, who says that Payton Pritchard will win Most Improved Player and Sixth Man of the Year. What a bold prediction that is.
It's not that crazy. I think Most Improved would be the tougher one for Pritchard. I'm looking at, like, is he even listed? Okay, he's 35-1 for Most Improved. I think
the last time they doubled up an award for somebody? You don't see that often.
That's a really good question. I would have to. I mean, there's obviously been some like MVPs and Defensive Player of the Years over the years, but in terms of Most Improved and Sixth Man, I don't know that that's ever happened. I have to do some more research on that. I mean, he's minus 250 for Sixth Man of the Year. He is running away with that one. I'm kind of
kicking myself, Nick. I had two of the bets of my life that I've already cashed out on, and I felt like at the time I was doing the right thing. I quadrupled my money on Franz for Most Improved Player and Payton Pritchard for Sixth Man of the Year, but wow. I no longer own those tickets, and I got both of them at like 50-1.
That's impressive. At the same time, I think we're still so early in the season. We're not even a quarter of the way through, for most
I'm
teams.
kind of
So
cheering against these guys to win those awards now, just so I'm not kicking myself at the end of the season.
Right. Well, dude, if you quadrupled your money, it's one thing if you just took like a meager payout, but if you quadrupled your money, I think this early in the season, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But yeah, I mean, seeing Franz as plus 175 after holding a 50-1 ticket is brutal. But I don't think that one's wrapped up at all. I think once Banchero comes back, I think we'll see some regression, and I think those odds could tighten up. But yeah, as far as 6th man of the year goes, I mean, it's been Pritchard by a mile so far.
Yeah, and that was the thought behind Franz. I think he's the rightful placeholder to be the favorite right now, but it'll be viewed differently when Franz gets back. I think we'll see. This person says Lakers were mud from 3 last night. Thank you for that. Zach says, "Hi, should I get?" Well, he's not PG-13 anymore because he changed his number. So should I get Paul George for Josh Hart? 14-team 9-cat. I also have LaMelo and Zion on my team. Godspeed on that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, kind of crazy that this is like a debate, right? If somebody told you before the year that you could swap those two, I think you would do it in a heartbeat. I think I still would. There's certainly going to be nights where Josh Hart, gives you those huge rebounding performances. The assists have really been there for him this season. Not quite as much over the last week and a half compared to where he was in mid-November. But after a brutal preseason for him, he's really turned it around. I mean, Paul George, I don't know, man. I mean, I would like to see him, play like 10 games in a row, or like even, 8 out of 10 and see what the numbers look like, because I don't know that it's quite fair to judge the raw numbers so far, because he's already had like 3 or 4 games this year where he's like immediately coming back from injury, played only 26 minutes against Detroit, their last time out. I still think on balance, barring a big time injury for Paul George that causes him to miss, weeks and weeks at a time, I still think you're going to get more out of him long term. It's been a complete worst case scenario start for him and the Sixers, but I think even if you get like a quote unquote bad Paul George season, it's probably still going to exceed what you get out of Josh Hart. Now I know Zach noted that he has LaMelo and Zion on his team, so like adding another injury risk to that group is tough to stomach. But your season already kind of depends on LaMelo staying relatively healthy and getting Zion back at some point. I think unless you're hanging on right now, you're probably falling down the standings without those two. I would just kind of go for the upside play with PG.
Yeah, the 3-point shooting has been rough. One of my favorite bets on the night, gift from the sports books, is Paul George for less than 2.5 made threes. He has hit that twice in a month, and he's shooting 29% from 3-point range in his last several games. Not good. Yeah. Not good stuff. This one from Alan, he says, is Nic Claxton a hold in a 9-cat?
Yeah, good question. I mean, Alex and I talked a lot about Claxton on yesterday's show, so feel free to check that out, in the archive on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or on our fantastic YouTube page. I mean, it depends on your league size, I guess. I think, in a 14 or a 16, yeah, you still hold. But it's been brutal across the board, right? I mean, he's down everywhere, including in minutes. He's lost like 5 minutes per game compared to last season. I know early in the year they were kind of limiting his minutes, but even when he strung together, a few healthy games in a row, he's still sitting in that like 26-ish minute per game range. So the rebounding is down. He's almost like half as many blocks compared to last year. He is still giving you a good field goal percentage, shooting like 63% from the field, but the free throw shooting is even worse than it's been in years past. He doesn't take that many, it's not like we're talking about a Giannis situation here, but he's gone from mid 50s to low 40s at the free throw line. He's also been ejected from a couple games this year. Like, I don't really know what's going on there. I would say overall he's still a hold, because I just don't think you'd be able to get a whole lot for him right now.
Adithya, I think I'm pronouncing your name right. He says, what up, Nick and Brandon? Hope all is well with you. We are doing quite well on this side. Coming to you live from Indonesia. Love that. So which of these two, we're going with Champagnie, Yabusele, or Deuce McBride for the rest of this week? What do you like?
Man, we're getting in the mud here. So Champagnie, Yabusele, or Deuce McBride. Oh, man. Right off the top, Champagnie continues to play, pretty reasonable minutes for this Spurs team, who feels like they're down somebody every single night. I think he's been the most consistent Although at the same time, they are finally likely to get Jeremy Sochan back tonight. I mean, he has not played since like the second day of November. So I think that's going to impact Champagnie's role. He still started every game this year, though. Even with Jeremy Sochan in the lineup, but of course Vassell was out early on. So that to me could be a little bit of a dicey situation. So I would perhaps stay away from that. I mean, Yabusele has been a really fun addition to the Sixers team. He's going to be a little bit more hit or miss than the other two guys. His good nights that he can give you 18 and 7 with a couple blocks and an assist. I think the safest option here, if you're just looking for floor, is probably Deuce McBride. Again, Champagnie's numbers are going to look the best, but the return of Sochan does worry me as far as how that impacts his role.
All right. I like it. Deuce McBride, a guy that is at least going to knock down some threes for you. Yep. This one from Zach we already talked about Zach. What am I doing here? This one from Jay. Would you guys drop Peyton Watson for Andrew Nembhard in a 12-team points league now that Aaron Gordon is back?
Man. So Nembhard made his return on Sunday against Memphis. Only played 15 minutes, did start. And that was a blowout loss for Indy. So, part of it, I think, was, kind of reintroducing him to the lineup and also being a blowout scenario. But he gave you 14 points, 4 assists, 2 boards. I've been pretty disappointed in Peyton Watson, who, should have had a pretty nice runway during this month-long stretch without Aaron Gordon. And, he started 11 straight games, only gave you 12 points, 4 rebounds, under 2 assists, and really didn't do a whole lot defensively. Like, that's where you look at a guy who in real life is a great defender. You're thinking, all right, can I get like 2.5, 3 combined steals and blocks out of him? And it ended up being about 1.8 combined. So I think this is fine. Watson, for what it's worth, also dealing with a groin injury. He's expected to play tonight against the Warriors, but that's something to monitor. Could be bothering him. I think they're going to be pretty comparable, but yeah, with Gordon back in the lineup now, I think I would take the chance on Nembhard. Pacers need somebody like him to step up now that he's back. So I would go Nembhard over Watson.
I'm going to call our guy here, GEL, is chiming in with trade. Let's grade this trade as if it already happened. He has Jalen Suggs and DeJounte Murray for Devin Booker in a 10-team cat league.
Interesting. Okay, so Devin Booker has been basically a borderline top 25 guy on the year. DeJounte has only played like 5 games, so kind of tough to get a read on that. I kind of like the Murray Suggs side of this, just because Suggs has kind of started to rebound a little bit as a 3-point shooter. Went through a really rough stretch. He's given you 2.5 combined steals and blocks per game. He's still hitting 2.1 threes per game as well. The Pelicans also are so bad right now, even with a lot of their guys back. I know Ingram didn't play the other night, but who knows when Zion's coming back. Like they're in blowout situations just about every single night. You kind of worry about what this team could look like going forward. Will there be changes at some point? I think there will be. Murray also has not shot the ball well. He's taken a ton of shots. The field goal percentage is kind of weighing him down right now. He's one of his last 13 from beyond the arc, was 2 of 15 overall last night. Booker's certainly the best player of this group. I wouldn't say it's a total loss, but I guess maybe I'm more of a Murray optimist than most. Like I think he'll end up coming around. Very fair deal, in a 10-team category league. I wouldn't say you gave up too much, but I think once Murray settles in, again, he's only played 5 games. He played 1 game, got hurt on opening night. So I'm kind of giving him a pass right now. Maybe that's not fair. But I think I would lean the Suggs Murray side of this ever so slightly.
That does seem like the more appetizing side of this trade. Thanks so much to everybody who hopped in the comments throughout the course of this episode. That'll do it for us this week on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, presented by DraftKings Pick 6. I'm Brandon Kravitz. He's Nic Whalen. Make sure you keep it locked here 4 times a week on this channel as we continue to pump out great content, and we will chat with you next week. Good luck tonight, Nick.